All right, here we go. Welcome to the NBA Strategy Show. It's Wednesday, February 12th. You know what that means? Well, I'm going to tell you. That means that this is it, man. This is the last day of legitimate basketball until the All-Star break. Yes, we'll have one game tomorrow. Two games tomorrow between the Clippers and Celtics, Oklahoma City Thunder, and Pelicans. But outside of that, this is the big one. 11 games to discuss. Sal Vetri along with me. I'm Dave Lochran, and the show is sponsored by SuperDraft. Before we get into all of this, let me tell you why you should be playing over there. SuperDraft.io, by the way, or download in the App Store. They've got no salary restrictions, no salary cap. It's all based on multipliers, which is a really cool format. It's a new format and unique, which I would suggest everyone head over and check it out. So here's what you do. If Luka Doncic is playing, which he is playing today, he's already ruled in, his multiplier would be, say, 1x. It might even be 1.1. I'm not sure. His price on FanDuel is seemingly pretty low. But another player, say Kevin Love, whether you want to play him or not, might have a 1.5x multiplier. Now, here's the big thing. Let's see if I'm right here. Doncic 1x, Lillard 1x. Kevin Love is at... Oh, wow, he's all the way down here, huh? Unimportant. A lot more than 1x. You could get $20 in free super cash to be used on the site to play and win real money by signing up using the promo code AWESEMO, AWESEMO, and depositing $100 or more. So you deposit $100 or more, you immediately get $20 in super cash. But, Sal, SuperDraft today, running their biggest contest yet. $10K to first, man. They just keep making these contests bigger and bigger. $40,000 prize pool, $10K to first, $12 to enter, 115 entries allowed per person, but $10K to first, $40,000. Listen, if this is something you haven't tried yet, definitely this is the perfect day to do it. $10K to first is a nice chunk of change, man, and you aren't going to find the type of contest like this anywhere else. It's a legitimately winnable format and contest today over at SuperDraft. And the cool thing about it is you can take your knowledge from researching FanDuel and DraftKings, and you can apply it straight over to SuperDraft, because if you have good projections, all you're doing is taking those projections and working in a lineup around those projections with the multipliers factored in. It's actually a more simpler format than having to work it into a $50,000 or $60,000 salary cap. So $40,000 jump shot today, $10K to first. It's the biggest ever on SuperDraft. That's not hyperbole, man. That is it. That is the truth. The biggest they've ran yet. Use the promo code AWESEMO. If you deposit $100 or more, you get $20 in free super cash. Go to superdraft.io or download it in the App Store. They are the sponsor of the NBA Strategy Show. $10K to first, Sal.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I was looking earlier in the week at their golf contest because they have some pretty good ones, and playing around with the NBA stuff's getting a little bit more familiar. But man, just golf and DraftKings and FanDuel already is all over the place, and with these multipliers, it's pretty crazy how, yeah, like you said, it's very projection heavy, and I think NBA is pretty fun. It's already like 15% full too.
I know. I'm looking forward to it. And you've got PGA contests as well if you haven't gotten into that. $7,500 long drive. That's $1,500 to first for anyone getting into that golf action today. We'll have shows coming up throughout the day as well. Anyway, I say we just jump right into this.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So we've got a few players that big news here. I'm going to get your opinion on it, and then we'll go game by game because we have 11 to touch on and only so much time. Luka Doncic has missed 7 games. He should be active today. He is already basically ruled in. We expect him to play. That's huge news. The Mavs opened up as 9-point favorites at home. I personally would take the points with the Kings there, but that's neither here nor there. And Giannis Antetokounmpo just had his first kid, and he will be out today. He'll be out until after the All-Star break. So his son was born. He is out, and that's big news. DraftKings has preemptively priced up guys like Middleton and Bledsoe, rightfully so. But as of now, Sal, those are the two huge pieces of news. And then the final one that we're waiting on missed last game, could miss this game and just hold out until after the All-Star break, is DeAndre Ayton. The reason that's so big, and I don't want to get too much in the weeds here. We'll get there. But the reason that's so big is Baines and Kaminsky are already out. Meanwhile, Dario Saric is also out. So their front court, if they're without Ayton again, is very, very, very thin.
Yeah, so right now I'm currently projecting Ayton in for 34 minutes. Again, that's just to have like sort of a placeholder. He's the one that I feel least confident about. I put Luka in for 32 right now with the All-Star break coming up. I don't know if they go full run at like a 35-minute game. It could even be 30. So at the price tag, it still makes him a neutral play. And then just looking at some of the other big ones, those are like the two biggest. I guess Serge Ibaka, I have him currently ruled in. Ibaka and Conley, other questionable tags that are going to be impactful today. They both are dealing with illnesses, so I put them both in. And I also have Kevin Love with the Achilles in. But I think that's a good point that I didn't really think about as much, that especially for Love and Ayton with lower body injuries, with this being their last game and then having a week off, there's a much higher chance that these players just sit.
Right. Especially given that this is, number one, a Phoenix team that isn't exactly pushing for the 3 seed, and also a Golden State Warriors team that has blown everything up to the point where they're 8-point dogs to the Suns. Like that should tell you all you need to know. So let's dive into it, starting with Orlando and Detroit. Should be a crawling game. Maybe not as slow as that Detroit Hornets game, which, by the way, the Pistons putting up 76 points. I mean, how do you even come to terms with something like that? You can't explain that away, not against the Hornets. The Hornets play at the lowest or slowest pace in the league, Sal, and Detroit's not far behind. But Orlando as well. Both of these teams on the season averaging 98 possessions per 48. The Pistons, meanwhile, have a bottom 10 defense. Orlando's defense is in the top 10, but they've struggled. They've labored a little bit of late. This game could have been really interesting if Rose was still out. Mikhailuk was out. You know, the injuries were sustained at least through the All-Star break. But starting with the Pistons, that's not the case. They expect Derrick Rose back today. Mikhailuk might not seem like a big deal, but, you know, if he jumps into another 25 or so minutes, that's going to take run away from guys that you could have considered. And I think that's enough to take some shine away from a few of these guys whose prices keep rising. Yeah.
Detroit with right now, I have Derrick Rose in for 30 minutes. I have Svi Mikhailuk coming back, and I have him in for, I believe, 24 minutes right now. So it just throws a lot of these value pieces that we've been getting off. Bruce Brown no longer going to be playing those maybe even 30 minutes, but upper 30s and mid 30s in minutes. It hurts Reggie Jackson to an extent as well. I have him at right now just 31 minutes. Langston Galloway, somebody who's been kind of just bottom feeder value the last couple of slates, out 4,100. Hard to see him getting past anywhere around 20 minutes. So this team is really hard to like. I guess the one thing to point out is that in the last game, Christian Wood ended up only playing low 20s in minutes, picked up 2 really quick personal fouls in the first 4 minutes, and then that kind of just ruined his overall night. The game ended up going into a blowout, so he couldn't get really much of that back. So right now, the ones that stand out to me the most would be Wood and actually Markieff Morris. Morris, I think, has more upside to his minutes, can rejoin the starting rotation if they were to go Wood at center and just take McCurr out of there. So Morris is the most appealing thing from this team for me right now. That being said, on the entire slate, he would rank outside of like a top 50 for me. So not much from Detroit coming in. It's just tough whenever you have 2 to 3 players rejoining the rotation today and over the last couple of days. The prices are just all priced up on these guys. I think the guy with the biggest ceiling is going to be Wood, but tougher matchup against one of the more difficult rebounding matchups against Orlando.
Yeah, I'm with you. And, you know, if you look at Wood with Drummond and Griffin off the court this season, granted, you know, most of his run has been backing up Andre Drummond, but nevertheless, 1.16 fantasy points per minute, 24% usage, rebound rate at 18.3%. I say that because if Wood continued playing those huge minutes, I would have no problem with him at 7K. I think this is one of these spots where I will likely be shying away from him a little bit more. Derrick Rose doesn't impact Christian Wood. Totally understandable. But in that same breath, how much do you need to get to here when we have 10 other games, 21 other teams to choose from? I think that's the issue I'm having. And I did an initial crunch just to see how much of each player I'd be coming up with very early on. So much is going to change. And I crunched 500 lineups. I think I got one Christian Wood lineup.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, right now I wouldn't expect to really get any, especially you factor in, like you said, the price point being up. But on the other side of this game, I think there is some appeal. You have Vooch finally priced up, I guess you can say. His price is just always in the mid to low 8K range. He always is a fine option when he's there. And he still looks good here. You have Detroit, before they ended up trading away Andre Drummond, being the second worst offensive rebounding rate team in the entire league. Like you said, their defense is one of the bottom 10 right now. I believe they're also seventh worst in overall points per possession. So I think it's a nice spot for Vooch. He ranks out as right now my 30th player, which on an 11-game slate is actually really good. I would get a good amount. In theory, the issue that I'm seeing is when I just look at this slate, and we'll get into it, depending on injury news on some of these guys, there's a lot of good value centers. Towns is on the slate. So Vooch ranks out as my 6th overall center, but still a fine play. It's just a matter of how much do I get to him relative to those other centers.
Yeah, look, I think going into a slate or rostering Vooch rarely kills you. I said the same thing about Ben Simmons yesterday, that the floor on Ben Simmons has just been remarkable. And I mean, not to get totally off track here, but the minutes that a guy like he plays, fuck it, I'm getting off track and I don't care. How insane is that team at home compared to the road? I tweeted yesterday, they look like legitimate championship contenders at home. Legitimate. On the road, they don't look like they belong in the postseason.
Yeah, it's. I haven't paid nearly as much attention as you and Josh probably, but no, yeah.
We've been paying close attention.
Yeah, I don't know what exactly it would be. I just know the overall issue there is spacing right now. So hopefully that gets better with some of the acquisitions they made.
Yeah, I think Alec Burks opened it up a little bit yesterday, but man, just a really strange team. Handled the Clippers yesterday at home. I don't know what it is, but nevertheless, we could keep this train rolling. Looking too at Detroit, they have done a good job for the most part of limiting opposing players down low. But while Christian Wood has been a good per minute guy, we can't sit here and pretend like he's going to be able in any capacity to fill Andre Drummond's shoes from a shot blocking standpoint, from a clearing the board standpoint. I think all of that stuff is well worth considering here when you're looking at Vooch. Already a bad defensive team in the Pistons, but this just gets a whole lot more difficult. And actually, surprisingly, the Pistons were already allowing top 5 points in the paint to their opponents this year, but they were only allowing middle of the road in second chance points, which makes sense when you have somebody like Andre Drummond to not give up those offensive boards. So I'm with you. Vooch is a very solid option here. And you mentioned he's priced up. I don't think he's egregiously overpriced at all, though. I think I'd say he's appropriately priced. That makes the most sense here. What do you make of his price point on FanDuel?
Yeah, I think over on FanDuel, it's a completely, I'm just pulling it up right now to reference it. It's something that I probably don't get to as much just because of the one center eligibility. So like if I'm in that range, I'm either at center going to try and prioritize, especially for FanDuel scoring, getting up to somebody like Towns, or there's 3 or 4 other centers that I would rather have that are, I don't know, a third of the price of him right now.
Yeah, and not only that, like even a guy in Whiteside who didn't play as many minutes yesterday because of the blowout, which was very unfortunate because that game put up like 250 some points and they didn't play the fourth quarter. Terry Stotts waved a white flag, maybe though, because they were on their first of a back-to-back. So I don't think Vooch is priced poorly at 9,400, but there's definitely a little bit more interest in other spots. Do you get to anyone else for the Magic?
So not really on this 11-game slate. Like I think Fournier and Terrence Ross are always okay options, but with just 3 to 4 or 5 more teams that we've been getting over the last week or two on this slate, they just kind of fade away and really not anything that I plan on getting to. And to close the door on what we were saying about Wood, he is a player that for the most part is going to get all of his at the rim. Close to 60% of his shot attempts are at the rim. He does shoot around 20% of the time from 3. It's not a good percentage. So yeah, it's an even tougher matchup when you consider that most of his action is going to be up against Vooch.
All right. So let's let's hit on Cleveland and Atlanta here. You've got the Cavs. You've got the Hawks. The Hawks have been a pretty dismal team, pretty much everywhere, but on the road they've seen some really evident struggles. They are 1-point favorites, however, against the Cleveland Cavaliers. You've got a 233 total in this game, it's up to 234 now. The Hawks are now 2-point favorites, so second highest over/under on the slate. Hawks have a 118 implied total against this Cleveland team that defensively is one of the worst in the league. I believe, as a matter of fact, on the season, the Cleveland Cavaliers are ranked 29th in defensive rating. Yeah, that's correct. And if you run it back since the start of January, they are the worst team in the league on defense. So really bad defense. There's really nothing encouraging about them. Yeah, 118.1 defensive rating since the start of the new year. That's 1.5 points per 100 possessions worse than the 29th ranked team in the Blazers. Cleveland doesn't play at an elevated pace, but they just allow such a high efficiency to opposing teams. We'll start again with the road team here in the Atlanta Hawks. What are we doing with Trae Young? He's 10-4 on DraftKings. Over on FanDuel, you've got him as the highest price point guard as well at 10,100.
Yeah, so relative to his own team, he's the guy that he's actually my second favorite option behind Dedmon right now. So when you're up in that 10K plus range, he's not the guy that I'm going to try and prioritize getting to, but I would probably get to him the second most. So in the matchup against just Sexton, Garland, like you were saying, a much better spot. It's going to make his projection look better. The minutes are really what's going to throw it here. If you put him at 34 minutes, he'll look like an okay play. You put him at somewhere around 36, he looks like a great play in this range. So I have him at 35 right now, just kind of split the difference. And he looks like a fine option. He's probably my second preferred pay-up option above $10,000 right now on the slate.
You know, credit to the Hawks last game because Orlando's still covered, but I started getting a little bit nervous. The Hawks were playing their second of a back-to-back, and all their starters played like 50 minutes the night before in a double overtime game, and that stayed competitive all the way up until the end. I expect them to come in here and at least this game stays. I don't see either side of this one getting out of hand. Neither team is good enough. Atlanta just dismal defensively, particularly in the backcourt. So Dedmon, in terms of playing time, what are you giving him?
Yeah, let me pull him up. So I have Dedmon right now I put him at 28 minutes.
Okay, and that's fair. I have him at 26, but I don't think it's against Cleveland. You could do a whole lot worse than Dwayne Dedmon. Now, he played a bunch in overtime against New York. I guess, you probably are right. The argument could be made that 28 minutes is where he will be, seeing that he played around 28, a little less in regulation in his debut, and then 28 against Orlando. So, I have no issues with Dwayne Dedmon at all. John Collins, it seems like DraftKings just continues to price him higher and higher. And I know he's had some solid games. He's a good player, pretty much an instant double-double. But I don't think I can pay $9K plus for him tonight. What about you?
Yeah, I rarely ever get to Collins because of that, unless somebody like Trae is out. But it's just hard to get to him, especially if they're going to give Dedmon decent run, as we've seen the past couple of days at the 5. And really, he doesn't get much minutes, if any, at the 5. So it's a tougher spot for him. I'm not getting to much Collins right now. So for me, it's really from this Atlanta side, it's just going to end up being Dedmon and Trae. And the thing that I do like about Dedmon is Cleveland is going to be big for all 48 minutes in their entire front court. I mean, depending on what happens with Love today, but with the acquisition of Drummond, the upside for Dedmon is that he does shoot at a decent rate from 3-point range. He does come out of the paint often. About 40% of his shots this season have been from 3. So the rebounding upside might not be as great with Drummond now there, but it's still a spot where he can get his.
Anything else from the Hawks?
No, I mean, if you get somebody like Hunter playing, I guess he's value, but he's just in a pool of like 10 players that you can choose from in that price range. So nothing stands out there.
All right. So Andre Drummond, last time out, played 29 minutes, but that was a incredible blowout. A game was not competitive from the jump. They end up losing by I think they lost by 40 points or something. I mean, the crazy number, 41 points. So a really ugly showing for Cleveland. no surprise there at all. But when you look at Andre Drummond's rotation, because this was his debut with Cleveland, he played 8.5 minutes in the first, and then in the second he played 7 minutes. So, you're probably getting. He was on track to play probably 32 or so. But if it's a close game, he was on pace to play a little more than 32 because he got pulled with the remaining 4 minutes left. He played 29. So I think you get 33, 34 minutes from him tonight in a close game. And I would expect him to play more in the second half than the first half. So I don't know, 16 minutes in the first half, 17, 18 in the second half seems to make quite a bit of sense. Is Andre Drummond in his second game with the Cavs against Atlanta somebody that you're going to be targeting today?
So as of right now, no, but yeah, I agree with everything you said. I saw he played 25 minutes, like you said, through 3 quarters. I put him at 32 minutes. I ended up you had the same rotations for Nance and Thompson in that first half, coming in, subbing in for Drummond and Love. So assuming that Love plays today, which is a big assumption, like we said at the top of the show, because of the All-Star break.
He's got that Achilles injury, so it would not be shocking at all if he sat this one out.
Exactly. So just assuming that he does play, I have both Love and Drummond at 32, and then Nance and Thompson just splitting the difference at 16 behind them. So at that type of minutes, Drummond doesn't look great. He has more run in him, I would say. I don't think there's any question that he could play 34 or 36 in what would be a really good matchup. So right now, I'm not going to get there if I put him at 32 minutes. It's something that I think they might let him run a little bit more after the All-Star break. And then, yeah, depending on Love's status, I would get to some Love, but not a ton there in the front court.
If I put Drummond at 94, or I'm sorry, he's 9,400. If I put him at 34 minutes, then I'm certainly going to get some Andre Drummond here. If Kevin Love sits, that's another thing. But yeah, I got a decent amount of Drummond on my initial crunch because I am giving him a little bit more than 32 minutes. I think, first of all, it was encouraging to see that he got up 17 shots in 29 minutes. That's only one game, but it's a different team, a different dynamic, and he was thrown right into the fire, was not hesitant to get shots up. And really, outside of Colin Sexton, who's, your highest usage player, there really isn't that much there. Darius Garland, he'll get a couple shots up, nothing spectacular. Cedi Osman, none of these guys are really going to wrestle away a lot of opportunities from Drummond, not any more than Detroit would when Reggie Jackson and Derrick Rose were out there. So even Kevin Love's usage has been, pretty much low 20s all season long. So I would expect the rebounding and the usage both to be there. If Andre Drummond gets those minutes, or if you're projecting him for 33, 34 minutes, you'll probably get more. What about the rest of the Cavs? Because for me, it's a barren wasteland. The thing is, but it's still against the Hawks. So that means that guys I would generally never have interest in at least pop onto the radar.
Yeah, so I think that's the case here. So like the front court is, like we said, because of all those minutes issues and how they're going to split it up moving forward, it's interesting. But the backcourt, not all. Well, actually, I guess looking at this now, I have Sexton and Osman as interests of mine currently. Osman at 4,100. It'll be interesting to see what you get out of Kevin Porter. So you had Porter check in just due to some personal foul reasons for Osman in the last game early on, so he got a little bit more run. I currently have Cedi at 28 and Porter at 24. And at that spot at 4,100, I get to some Osman. Never feel great about it. Colin Sexton's a guy who it's tough to see sort of the ceiling coming out. He's been playing fine. He seems like he's priced appropriately. But because of this matchup, I plan on getting a little bit more. I have him for around 32 fantasy points right now. He's facing Atlanta, who ranks 29th in transition points per play. So that's going to help the point guard. They rank dead last in steals. That's going to also help a guy like Sexton, who in his second year still has some turnover issues. So from this team right now, I probably expect to get the most of Osman and Sexton, and that's just sort of like filler value at their price points.
Yeah, I'm with you. Kevin Porter Jr. over the last 30 days has a 26% usage rate. Not bad, 0.96 DraftKings points per minute, but that doesn't mean all that much if you're only getting 24 minutes from him. So I'd like to see him get more run. He played 31 and 28. You had mentioned some foul trouble for Cedi Osman, which definitely comes into play, but Yeah, Porter I don't think is a bad tournament option. I'd also say ownership here is spectacularly important because if you're getting high ownership, not including Drummond, because we know that he is proven contributor that can give you monster fantasy totals night in and night out. But if you're getting significant ownership on any non-Drummond Cleveland Cavalier, that to me would be a telltale sign that you at least want to look elsewhere before loading up on them. I'm just pulling it up now. We do have ownership. So let's see where the Cavs are at. Drummond's at 19%. That's high on this slate, but I do understand it. And then the rest of Cleveland, Kevin Porter's at 9%. Sexton and Garland are both at 6%. Okay. I mean, that sounds about right, only because it's Atlanta. If this was against Toronto, these guys would be 5, 1, 0, and 0% owned.
Yeah, exactly. So it's especially on a bigger slate, so it's just naturally going to be lower. It's a spot where I'm sort of indifferent. I wasn't expecting any of the Sexton and Garlands to be highly owned, so if I get to some of them, I'm okay with it.
New York Knicks, Washington Wizards. Let's move over to Madison Square Garden, where you've got the New York Knicks with a 115.5 implied total, 113 for the Washington Wizards, 228.5 over under. Knicks are 2.5-point favorites at home. This time we'll start with the home team. No more Marcus Morris. Julius Randle has seen his price tag really sit in that mid 8K range, which I think is reasonable. The big thing here, though, is you're going up against the Washington Wizards. A Wizards team that is just seeded monster game to pretty much every opponent they've been playing. Zach LaVine literally didn't touch. I'm serious about this. I was watching. He didn't touch the ball for the first 6 minutes of the game. Like, not like he didn't get a shot up. He didn't touch the ball. Satoransky would initiate the offense and didn't even look his way. And then LaVine just goes nuclear because he was facing a Washington team. He only need 3 quarters against them. So it is a somewhat intriguing Knicks team due to the matchup when Randall is, I'd say, reasonably priced. You're not getting a discount on him, but he's the first guy we need to talk about because he's the one guy that can go out there and throw up monster numbers. He's 8,600 on both DraftKings and FanDuel.
Yeah, so the spot for Randall right here is just, it's going to be good no matter what. He's going to get, as long as this game stays close, you're going to get him for, I have him at 34 minutes right now, and that could even be a low number. He's the most interesting Nick for me today. The problem is just the price point of 8,600. It's appropriate, but it seems to just be a spot where you start to pay $400 more for Vucevic. We talked about a little bit more stability, maybe more upside there at the center position, and just other players around him that we'll get into in this slate. So all the matchups really good for him. You do have Washington getting a little bit healthier, so it's just not Mahimny being out there for 26 minutes, as now you get some Mo Wagner and Rui, and it's still not a terribly difficult matchup, but it's getting a little bit more at least formidable at defense. So Randall, if you get to him, there's nothing bad I can say. He just kind of grades out as a neutral player for me right now. The thing that's appealing is trying to factor in just how bad this Washington team is, one in transition and just overall defense, worst in points per possession, points per play on the entire season. Transition, they're a bottom 5 team, and now they're going to be playing on a back-to-back. So that's always appealing. Makes it a little bit more interesting to get to guys like Randall.
Yeah, and they're also allowing, top 5, top 10 points per possession in post-up situations too. Julius Randle, one of his signatures is operating in the post or backing players down. You've seen a lot of that from him. So I think it's a pretty interesting spot for Randle. Outside of Randle, though, it feels similar to this matchup for Cleveland against Atlanta. You really want to get to Knicks. Well, no one ever really wants to get to Knicks, but you want to be able to exploit a matchup with Washington, the same as you'd want to exploit one with Atlanta, especially given that the Knicks have an over-under in this game of 228.5, which is remarkably high for a team like that. But Elfrid Payton's price has come up. RJ Barrett, I guess, would be one guy that we could discuss here, but his minutes in 3 games since returning are very low. His production has been marginal at best. unless you want to get to Reggie Bullock, who is there on this team that you're targeting?
Yeah, no, not much. And that's the issue. Like, you have just such a great defensive matchup, but the worst possible team comes to town where they're throwing out there like 6 or 7 different wings for 15 to 20 minutes a night. You have no idea if Damian Dotson's going to take the court. Lately, you have Wayne Ellington's been playing the upper 20s in minutes, 18 or more minutes in 3 straight, played 30, I think, in the last one. I have Ellington as actually grading out as, like, if you're just talking point per dollar value, like a top 12 play in that regard, but it's for like 16 and change fantasy points, like 17 fantasy points.
Right.
And he's a wing for a team that rotates through, and you have a 3-game sample of him getting any sort of decent minutes. He also shoots, this is crazy, I just pulled this up. He also shoots 82% of his shot attempts from 3, so not the exact type of value you want to rely on, especially when the minutes aren't stable. So it's really just Randall if I was to get anything here. Just hard to like the rest of this team. The minutes are just all terrible for low point per minute producing wings at that point.
Yeah, I mean, Ellington is as scoring dependent as they come. He really is. He's super cheap, yeah, but like you said, value at 16 fantasy points on an 11-gamer probably isn't going to get the deal done. What about the Washington Wizards? You mentioned second of a back-to-back. Bradley Beal's back to playing big minutes, but only 34 last game. So 34, then 34, and then the 2 before that, 38 or 39, 39. I'm giving him 35 today. I feel okay with that. I don't think Scott Brooks is too concerned about getting him out there for significant run against the Knicks, assuming this game stays close. But Bradley Beal's price has been one that I've had a tough time getting to. Yesterday, the reason for that was Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine at a considerable discount from Beal was just the easiest move to make. And now you've got 11 games on this slate and a number of really good players. For example, Devin Booker on DraftKings specifically is $1,200 less expensive than Bradley Beal. On FanDuel, he is $1,500 less expensive than Bradley Beal. And there are a lot of players that I could rattle off here that you'd be getting at significant discounts. Chris Middleton, $7,200 on FanDuel. On DraftKings, Middleton is only small forward eligible, but a lot of these wings are in really good spots, and you're not paying a premium for them. What are you doing with Beal?
Yeah, so Beal, it's difficult. So I love the spot for him transition-wise. This Knicks team ranks bottom 5. Overall defense, they're bottom 10 defense. So it's a fantastic spot. The price point comes up on a back-to-back. I also have him at 35 minutes. Median projection-wise, he's not going to look great. I have him for like 48 fantasy points, and on a huge slate, it doesn't do much for me. The one thing that also is discouraging is that Beal's shooting one of his worst just percentages from 3-point range this year. 2, because of that, he's just taking less 3-pointers as well at this point. But he's driving a lot more. So just in the second full season without John Wall, he's sort of taking on that role, getting to the rim a lot, which is good for fantasy scoring. But against a team that is huge in their front court for all 48 of their minutes in the Knicks, it's not as appealing. So when on a slate where you have like 8 options at 10K or above, and some of them look really good, I don't just median projection-wise get to Beal, but that's also what the whole industry is going to do today. So I see him at like 2% ownership right now. He's a guy in this type of a matchup that can go and get you 60, no doubt about it, pretty easily. So I'm going to get to some Beal. He's not going to grade out well median-wise relative to the field, but just because of ownership, I'll have some shares.
Okay. I don't know if I will. Not because Beal can't come out there and rack up monster totals, but there's so much else in the area that I'm likely going to have a lot of. I just don't know if he's going to fit, but I'm never going to argue about it. I like guys like Booker quite a bit more, and a few other guys that we'll discuss momentarily. The non-Bradley Beal plays from this team, let's talk about them for a second. And I actually want to I want to pull up the popcorn machine from yesterday so we can get an idea of what this looked like, another game without Thomas Bryant. So Jan Mahimi ended up playing 21 minutes was that 19 minutes? 21, right? Yeah, 21 minutes. Did not see the court in the fourth quarter. Mo Wagner ended up with 6 minutes in the first quarter, played straight through the second for another 5 minutes. That's 11. But then he closed the game out alongside Beal, Ish Smith, and mind you, I'm not including the last 20 or 30 seconds when Scott Brooks pulled him, but with Beal, Ish Smith, Rui Hachimura, and Davis Bertans. So that's interesting there. Mo Wagner ended up playing almost 27 minutes and played the final 15 minutes to close that game out, Sal.
Yeah, and that's something. So I had a good amount of Mo Wagner last night. He was in like my main single entry lineup. Doesn't end up doing great, but he gets to a spot where he doesn't kill your lineups. He had like 14 fantasy points going into that final 5 minutes of the game, and he ended up closing, which I wasn't expecting, so that helped a lot more. I have him on a back-to-back tonight. They said, it's funny, they said that they were going to monitor his minutes, and then he ends up playing the most that he's played.
Oh, dude, you didn't know that's the Scott Brooks special.
Yeah, I didn't change anything because I had him at 24 minutes, so I didn't know how much more they would monitor that. But
anytime Scott Brooks says he's going to monitor minutes, he just kills them.
Yeah. But he, like, I put him at 25 tonight, just not really knowing what to expect. It's nice to see that he's going to close, so I can kind of project that again, but on the back-to-back being a little bit more conscious of it. But with that said, I think that right now Mo Wagner stands out as my favorite Washington Wizard. At 25 minutes, he grades out for around 25 fantasy points for 4,500. It looks like a really good spot. This is right now, he could look back in a couple of years and might be his career high in just field goal percentage. He's at 65.6%. A lot of that is because 60% of his shots come at the rim. So just reliable from that regard in fantasy. I like Mo Wagner. I think Rui's fine at 5,100. I don't know how much they actually limit him on a back-to-back. I have him at 30 minutes. Looks fine as well. I would rank this team as Wagner, Rui, and then Beal and Ish Smith. I would get this sum.
Okay. So Wagner's now closed out back-to-back games, which is encouraging. And fortunately, but surprisingly, Washington's played 3 games that have been competitive enough to actually see what their full 48-minute rotations are going to look like. So close both of them out. Does he play, another 27 minutes? I don't know, but I'm going to put him at 26 minutes tonight. I think that's very reasonable, Sal.
Yeah, and so right now, I'm sure the ownership will change some, but he's pretty much going unowned. That also happened yesterday, which makes sense. It's not like he was playing huge minutes until yesterday. But if I put him at 26 minutes, so at 25 minutes, he's my third favorite center option on the slate. At 26 minutes, he becomes just point per dollar wise my favorite center option.
Okay. So we have Wagner, we have Beal. Is there anyone else that you want to talk about? The one guy, by the way, that I just tried to stay away from yesterday was Troy Brown. And, he had 5 steals, so you get a little lucky there. But 16 minutes, shot 0 for 5 from the field, 0 for 2 from long range. When Troy Brown's popular, I think it's a lot easier to just shy away from that because those minutes are not locked in. He's not locked into 28 minutes. We've seen him all over the place. But aside from him, the rest of this team, it gets a little bit dicey. Ish Smith played 28 minutes. Shabazz Napier played 19 minutes off the bench. Jerome Robinson's getting minutes. Isaac Bonga. I mean, I just don't see anything that is overwhelmingly appealing, but we need to talk about Rui quickly and Davis Bertans as well.
Yeah, so Rui, I currently have it at 30 minutes. He looks like a fine option at 5,100 today. He grades out for me just a little bit under 27 fantasy points. So somebody who's firmly in a player pool for me. So what you get out of him is nice. You get somebody who's playing closer to the rim, so you get the rebounding upside. But then most of his shot attempts come from mid-range, which for just efficiency standpoints isn't great, but at least you're getting the stretch part out of him. He'll take shots from 3, be able to get rebounds by the rim. So he picks up peripherals. He has a huge minute ceiling once he's fully healthy in the upper 30s, but on a back-to-back, probably not the night that it comes out. I would put him behind Wagner on this team. Just at the price point that Bertans is at, I can give him 31 minutes today. That's where I have him at. I don't know if it's just my personal rates in here, but at this price point, and really for like the last game or two for Washington, I haven't gotten Bertans to pop that much compared to some of his other teams, but that's usually how it is for me with Bertans and a lot of players who, for the most part, once he has moved back to the 3 now and most of his shots coming from 3-point range, scoring dependent there, once they get up into this high 5K range, 6K range, if they don't drive a lot or pick up peripherals as much, I just don't get to them as much.
No, I'm with you. Yeah, Rui Hachimura actually, outside of Thomas Bryant, is essentially tied with Jan Mahimi in rebound chances per game. So yeah. That is encouraging. He does a solid job of getting those boards. Average rebound distance is the same as Thomas Bryant and Mahimi, saying that even if he's not at the 5, he's playing, as you mentioned, close enough to the basket to make that work. And that's a big thing when you're getting these power forwards or centers. They need to have significant rebounding upside and the ability to put shots in and clean up around the rim. I think Rui does have that. So if it's between him and Bertans, give me the discount all day on Rui Hachimura.
Yeah, and when you factor in just players that have like at least 30 3-point attempts on the year, Bertans right now shoots 75% of his shots from three. He's top 10 in the entire league in that regard. So a fantastic player in just like real life NBA when players are out, if he moves down to the four, so you get some rebounding upside. But outside of that, he's pretty much just a lot better of a Wayne Ellington, of course, and going to play more minutes and more consistent, but you're just relying a lot on the 3-point shooting.
One thing I tell people all the time, like if you're learning how to research NBA and you don't know the best places to look, or you know the sites, you just don't know how to use them. One thing with bigs that in today's basketball is really appealing is, are they getting most of their shots from around the basket or from 3-point range? Because those are one of them is the most efficient at the basket. The other one is going to net you the most points and is the highest upside. When you're jacking up, 40% of your shots from mid range, it's not that encouraging, speaking about Rui Hachimura, but at the same time, he's cheap enough with 30-plus minutes against the Knicks that I'm not too worried about that. He's not a top play of mine, by the way, Sal, but he is somebody that if I end up on, I'm not gonna be upset about it either.
Yeah, I completely agree, especially when the price point's down. If anything, it's just nicer to have a little bit more variance with the 3-point upside there.
For sure. And this Washington team in general is not, at least right now, garnering virtually no ownership. The highest owned right now in DraftKings is Smith at 3.6%. 3.6% there. And on FanDuel, just so everybody knows, you got Randall pretty high on both. Makes sense to me. You've got to come all the way down to Davis Bertans at 1.7%. So those are your highest owned players. No ownership on either of them. Rui is 5K on FanDuel. He's 0.1% owned. All right, Indy, Milwaukee. Here's a good one right here. You've got the Indiana Pacers at home against the Milwaukee Bucks. And the big thing with this is, well, the huge thing, the biggest thing on the slate is Giannis Antetokounmpo, as we referenced earlier, is out. So he's not playing. This line opened at 1, moved to 2, and now it's back to 1. The Bucks 1-point favorites on the road, 222.5 total. But I got to tell you, man, the Pacers are not a bad basketball team. They have had some trouble closing games out at home. We saw that in the past a couple games recently. But the Bucks, even without Giannis, have just been dominant. They've been dominant. Now the line opened at 14 against Sacramento, and then with Giannis out, it moved immediately to 10, and they still covered that one, 12 points. Bing, bang, boom. That's what they do, Sal. So the big question here isn't whether you like Milwaukee laying 1 point on Milwaukee. I do. But the question is, do we still pay up for Middleton? Do we still pay up for Bledsoe? My answer, I do.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I do too. So you see, and I hope it dissuades some people. We have ownership right now, right? Yeah, I'm going to pull it up.
Yeah, we have ownership.
So I hope it dissuades some people that they're priced up now finally, but it's still fine spots for them. Like not expensive enough in my opinion. If anybody's properly priced and maybe gets a little bit away from, at this point, it's Middleton, but you have dating back to last year. If you take Giannis off the court, if you take Brogdon off the court when he was on this team, and then you could even take George Hill off the court because he's out today as well, just to get a nice sample. It's around 1,000 minutes for all these players I'm about to say. So Middleton and around that time, 31% usage, a 1.49 fantasy point per minute.
Did you say you took Brogdon off too?
Yeah, Brogdon.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so you get him as a 1.49 fantasy point per minute producer. If you take George Hill off as well, and you could even take Korver. He's out today just to make it truer for what you're going to see today. In about 800 minutes, 1.49 fantasy point per minute producer for Middleton. Bledsoe's around a 1.5 guy. You have Ersan right around a point per minute producer, just more minutes upside. Lopez gets up to around 0.85. So all of them look fine. The production is there. The price points on these guys are getting to where they should be, but I still think they're a little bit inefficient. The ones that are the most inefficient is going to be Ersan 1 and then Bledsoe 2 for me. So Ersan in the last game, he picked up 4 first half fouls, 2 in the first quarter. His minutes just got completely capped because of that. It's a situation where I think you see him play 28, 30, 32 minutes. Otherwise, it's a tough rebounding spot against this front court of Indy, but he's 4,800 today. He looks like one of the best value plays on the entire slate, as he usually does when Giannis is out, and he's priced too cheap in my opinion. Bledsoe, I have in for 32 minutes, and if I put him nowhere near what his rates are just overall with Giannis and Brogdon off the court, if I just put him at like a 1.3 guy today instead of like a 1.4 or something, he grades out for over 40 fantasy points. He looks really good. So they would be my two favorite players to get to. Middleton right there as well. I think he's fine. Also, with Corver and George Hill out, you get some of these secondary unit players probably going to get even more minutes. I have Connaughton at 28 minutes. I have DiVincenzo at 28, and both of them start to look like okay values.
Yeah, Ilyasova's played, 649 minutes without Giannis since the start of last year. And I'm not taking Brogdon off for this one. There's no need. The impact Giannis has is astronomical. 1.07 DraftKings points per minute. Only 18% usage, but it doesn't matter because he's going to rebound well. He's going to see some opportunities to get some block shots, and the minutes are really the biggest thing. So Ilyasova, it was a lot nicer when he was 3,200 last time out, but I still don't have an issue with him here. Like you mentioned, very important, had he not been in foul trouble, he definitely would have seen more minutes. I'm not as comfortable giving him 32, but I could easily see him getting up to the 28, 29 minute range, maybe more. You have to wonder though, and I just want to pull this up one more time to reference something. Here we go. You have to wonder where are we at? If Budenholzer ran him extra minutes. Actually, I was going to say towards the end to compensate for the foul trouble, but that doesn't seem to be the case. It was a very kind of erratic rotations that we saw, but didn't he have 4 personal fouls before halftime?
Yeah, he picked up 2 in the first and then 2 in the second.
No, 3 in the second.
Oh, 3 in the second. Yeah, so 1. Yeah, wow. So I was looking at it on Popcorn Machine, and I was trying to piece together how many minutes he would have played, and I ended up just going back to the other games without Giannis and kind of taking those, and I put him at 28 today. But it's really hard to tell what the minutes would have been just because of
how
many fouls he was picking up.
So here's what I'd say. He only had 1 foul in the first quarter early on. He played 5 minutes. He had 4 fouls going into halftime. He lost a minute there towards the end, but he didn't start the second half. Right? He didn't start the second half because of that foul trouble, and then he got 5 minutes to close out the third. So that's probably the rotation that you would have seen from him. That's probably what you would have seen. So let's piece it back together. You put those 5 minutes to start the quarter, take him off, and then you give him 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 2 to close out the third, 3 to start the fourth, and then you give him final 5 minutes like he played at the end of the game. So it's not crazy to add 5 minutes to what he played, which would put him around 30. But yeah, 28 being a little bit more conservative seems reasonable, seeing that he hasn't gotten over 30 very often with Ilyasova out this season. Or I'm sorry, with Giannis out this season.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that makes a little bit more sense. The other bodies being out doesn't matter as much for rotational minutes overall. It's probably just, so no Corver, no Hill. You're just going to get those wings. Like Sterling Brown ended up playing 20 plus minutes in the last one.
What do you think of? Well, actually, let me ask you this: if you're prioritizing guys like Middleton and Bledsoe, $88 and $7,700 respectively on DraftKings, $7,200 Middleton on FanDuel is absurd. $6,700 Bledsoe. I mean, why even bother? But I'm not even going to ask you about FanDuel. It's pretty easy to know what you're doing there. How would you prioritize them on DraftKings?
Yeah, so I currently have it as Ersan, Bledsoe, and Middleton in that order. I have a lot of interest in Bledsoe today. He's a top 10 interest of mine, and just looking at the ownership, he's currently coming in at 10%. And if this holds, especially with Middleton under 5%, it would definitely be because you see these price points finally getting up to a point where people think they're appropriate. But Giannis is the most ridiculous fantasy producer in how much stuff he actually takes away from the other players on his team production-wise, that these price points from Bledsoe still probably $800 too cheap. Same thing for Middleton. So a lot of interest in Bledsoe and Ersan right now, and I'll have above 4% of Middleton.
All right. Indiana Pacers side of this one, Victor Oladipo, 4,800. I mean, he's really struggled, Sal. There's no arguing. This has been a struggle for him early on. He's shooting below 30% from the field. That's going to change, But at this point, the rust is mostly gone. He's just gotta figure it out. And true shooting's 39%. EFG is lost as EFG. Either way, it's not good at all. I mean, overall, we've just seen really, really underwhelming numbers.
35%.
Okay, I have 35.3.
On cleaning the glass, that comes out, and I've never seen this before, as literally 1 percentile, not top 1 percentile, like 1 percentile, like the worst you could possibly have. I've never seen it below like 9.
No, that's crazy. I mean, think about it. He's shooting 9 for 39 from 3, 23 for 78 from the field. He has 15 points as his highest total, and he's playing around 28 minutes now. The one encouraging thing that's very important is that despite all of this, Oladipo's usage is still 28%. But one thing I worry about, and I voiced this to Josh the other day, is Oladipo last season and prior seasons, well, forget about with Westbrook, but last season wasn't playing with any like really, really impressive facilitators and playmakers. And if he was, they were still kind of in their infancy of developing that. Sabonis being one guy who's a good passing big man, but this year he's showcased that a lot more. But having Brogdon at the point, I think is really going to hurt his assist totals this year. So if he's not giving us scoring totals or high point totals, it's going to be ugly. He doesn't have more than 4 assists in a game through his first 6. And I'm not convinced that that's going to change. Sure, when he starts playing 32 minutes, it'll be better. But I'm not convinced his assist rate is going to improve all that much.
Yeah, and it is definitely concerning. So you factor in that right now we have him as the second highest owned player on the slate. Like I think Oladipo's grades out as my favorite play from this team, but nowhere near on this slate something that I would be getting to at like the 36% clip we have him at right now. I think there's a lot of value. Ersan's at the exact same price point and not a different position, of course, but not really anywhere near his own currently. So I'm not going to get there on Oladipo. I see why people want to. Like, I don't expect him to continue to be literally the sample that we have, the worst shooter in the league. I don't think that's going to happen moving forward, but it's a spot that I have him for 24 and change fantasy points at 4,800. That's with me giving him the ceiling of the minutes limit that we were last told of 28 on him. But when you factor in right now 36% ownership, it just makes it a lot less appealing for a guy, like we said, who's in as big of a rut as they come. And even if he is going to get out of it and start shooting well, like he'll put up a score like around 30 fantasy points. That'll be fine if you have him at that 36% clip. But if I don't, it's not like it's going to crush me for the night.
Yeah, I mean, really at this rate, I shouldn't say this, but it feels like the upside on Oladipo is pretty limited. Not because he can't score, but I don't know if he's going to be able to put up the peripherals. The most minutes you probably get from him is 30. And I think my guess is there's no way Nate McMillan runs him for 30 minutes if he hasn't done it yet with the All-Star break coming up. So I'll give him another 28 today. Exactly. And I think that makes most sense. Do you like anybody else from the Pacers here? Anybody that stands out as reasonably priced, like $6,700 Brogdon? Sabonis is up almost $10K now.
Yeah, Brogdon's the only one who stands out as reasonably priced. So right now, just early, I have like a 70 player pool that will definitely get trimmed down, or maybe not by much, but right now Brogdon makes that, but nothing that stands out about him. He's just appropriately priced, completely fine. The assist percentage is still up there. It takes a little bit of a hit with Oladipo, but nothing crazy. I have him at 34 flat fantasy points, so it's not a fantastic play. I imagine he shouldn't be picking up any ownership, so that would make him a little bit more appealing. Yeah, no ownership, 2%. He's just like right now he would rank like 60th overall for me. So just an okay play.
I don't have anything else here.
Yep. Same.
All right. Let's talk about Brooklyn and Toronto. So these two teams actually faced each other only a few days ago. Was, 2 games ago? Yeah. On the 8th, Karis LeVert has turned, he has raided the ship outside of last game where he shot 4 for 13, but at the same time, The positive aspect of that is he played 33 minutes in back-to-back games, 6 turnovers. That was a very heinous-looking performance, but you're now seeing his minutes settle into a much more accommodating spot where you can actually roster him. And he was very cheap on FanDuel coming into the last game. He's still only $6,000. We'll start with the home team in Brooklyn. Kyrie Irving is out again. God, he's only played 20 games this season. He's officially out with that knee injury. It's going to open things up for a couple of people. So let's kick it off with Spencer Dinwiddie. You're getting 35, 36 minutes from him. You're getting 30-plus minutes from Karis LeVert, barring foul trouble or injury. The real question is, do we like this matchup enough, or are we not concerned enough with this matchup to get to both of these guys on tonight's slate?
Yeah, so both of them, they don't rank out as priorities for me, but I think they're both in play, especially when they're coming in at lower ownership, like pretty much single-digit ownership right now, so it looks good. The nice thing about LeVert is, so since Irving's been out in his last 3-game stretch that he's been playing very well, his field goal percentage and for the most part of the season, 45.3% effective field goal rate, terrible. But
he was shooting as bad as Oladipo at one point.
Yeah, exactly. And now that he's getting more shot attempts, instead of taking 9 shots, 10 shots a game, he's in the 20s range since Irving has gone out for this stint. That's helping him. His drive rate is one of the better ones that you'll find in the league. It's in the 36% of the time he's driving, finishing at the rim. So that's good to see for fantasy point production. The downside is that he's going to be facing a bigger team today if Ibaka is in. So LeVert, I think, just at lower ownership, he's in play, just not a priority. And I can say the exact same things for Dinwiddie, who probably has a little bit more of a stable minutes ceiling on him. I have him at 34 minutes. I have LeVert at 32 minutes. They just both at their price points are things that I probably don't get to that much. They're better plays, I'll say, than Brogdon is in the previous game, slightly, but nothing of priority at their price points.
Okay. So outside of those guys, is there anything that you want to talk about on Brooklyn?
So the only other thing that I could, I guess, point out here would be that Taurean Prince at 4,800, he just stands out to me because of the ownership on Oladipo at the same price point. We talked about Ersan as well, but I have Prince right now only for, and I'll pull up Oladipo. I have Prince for just 1.3 fantasy points less than Oladipo today, and he's coming in at nowhere near the same ownership. It takes up a different roster spot, but for currently less than half the ownership or more than half the ownership, I'm fine pivoting to that spot a little bit more. I don't like Prince, but if you're looking for a pivot, I would go to Ersan, and then Prince is another option.
All right. We're at the halfway point, so it's a good time to let everyone know a couple of things. Definitely suggest you listen up here because we've got a couple of really cool things coming down the pike. The first one is the biggest giveaway we've ever done at awesemo.com. Going into our 3rd year here, and that means, well, that we're giving away we're giving away We're giving away about $3,000 worth of premium or Awesemo Plus Platinum annual 365-day full calendar year subscriptions. 3 of them. That's right, 3 of them. All you have to do, right? And you got to get this in by today or tonight. You got to go to at awesemo_com. That's the first thing. Very simple. And if you look, you'll see the pinned tweet. Okay, the pinned tweet will give you all the directions that you need in order to win this. I'll read it quickly, but it's very self-explanatory. $3,000 value. Just guess the total points from the Lakers and Nuggets game tonight, and you're entered. So you got to follow awesemo_com and Awesemo NBA. Very simple. Reply with your guess, then like and retweet it. And you got to get the reply in by 10 p.m. tonight before tip-off. So total points scored in this game. It's a giveaway valued at $3,000. 3 lucky winners getting 1-year platinum Awesemo Plus passes. No point in not getting in on that. Head over there. And you know what? You got a pretty decent shot of winning this. We got about 418 responses right now. You know, there's a good chance. And if you want to check out awesemo.com right now, and you've heard a lot about it, you think it's worth it, you want to give it a shot, if you use the promo code NBA Strategy, all one word, that'll get you 50% off your first week of Awesemo Plus Platinum subscription from the ownership projections that Sal and I referenced throughout the show, the player projections, the top stack tools, the boom bust tools, you name it. All these tools developed and used by Alex Baker, Awesemo himself. He made them. He uses them. So you're not just getting some faux projections, faux ownership projections that he doesn't use himself. You know, some sites do that. And all of our premium written articles that these guys spend a ton of time on, the lineup builder, the fantasy cruncher add-on, the premium Slack chat, you name it. Check it out. Use the promo code NBA Strategy. Get you 50% off your first week at awesemo.com/join. It's awesemo.com/join. All right, Sal, now that I'm out of breath, let's talk about Minnesota and Charlotte. Well, you just have a bouillabaisse of rotational players that we never thought we'd be talking about in February, but here we are. So I'm just going to set the table for you, and I'm going to let you run with it. We've got the Minnesota Timberwolves as 8.5-point favorites. This game opened at 7, 227 total, 117.8 implied for the Timberwolves, 109.3 for the Charlotte Hornets. So looking at last game, D'Angelo Russell, pretty underwhelming from a production standpoint outside of his scoring. He finished with 22 points and only 30 fantasy points, but he got 32 minutes in a tough matchup. This matchup, a lot easier. Now, it's a pace down spot. It is a pace down spot, but you've got Russell. That's an easy one. Karl Anthony Towns, we can get into that. That's pretty easy to discuss. I like Towns a lot today. But what are we doing? And I actually want to start with these guys. What are we doing with the Juancho Hernan-Gomez, the Malik Beasley, the James Johnson? These guys who right now on DraftKings are projected for Johnson, the most ownership of anyone on this slate at 3,500. Juancho Hernan-Gomez projected for 26% ownership. The value is flooding in on Minnesota players right now because they're discounted, and many of them are getting minutes. And to finally close the book on this and turn it over to you, there are 6 players from this game projected in the top 15 of ownership. 5 of them, and this is subject to change, 5 of them are from Minnesota, Sal.
Yeah, it's crazy. I opened it up and I saw that James Johnson was the highest owned player, and I didn't understand it too much. So you had Johnson actually end up closing this game out, but it's going to be a little bit, I would say, just Fox or fake here. So I think that ownership is something that I'm fine getting away from. So first of all, it's just high ownership on a value play that's not consistent. You saw him close out the game and play 7 minutes there, which is, I guess, encouraging, but similar to what we've seen out of other players as of late, like just Lonnie Walker, like a Chris Bouchard. There's no stability behind that because of the 1 game sample on it. And this team already made a commitment, one, via the trade to get these players, but more of a commitment to Malik Beasley and Juancho Hernan-Gomez to get more run in the starting rotation, which hurts Johnson a little bit more. I do think that both Beasley and Hernan-Gomez are well in play today. I have currently them both in a player pool and a lot of interest in both. So Hernan-Gomez at 3,900 right now in this offense, and you factor in his time previously with Denver, not a great point per minute producer there. I have him at like a 0.75, 0.78 guy today, but they want to play in minutes. I put him at 26 minutes. He grades out for around 20 fantasy points. So you could take that for what it is. He's coming in at around 25% ownership. So I'm kind of indifferent at that ownership number. If I had him in a quarter of my lineups, it feels a little bit much. Actually, if I think about it a little bit more, but Beasley also feel fine with 4,700. I have him at that 32-minute mark. You have Charlotte right now. This team is just falling apart from what seemed like a hot early start. They are currently on the season, the 3rd worst defense. But if you look at them on their last 10 games that they've played, they are the 2nd worst team in defense overall. They are the worst team offensively and the 2nd worst teams in point differential. So it is as good of a matchup as it'll get for this team. I think that helps Malik Beasley a little bit. I think his minutes stay stable, even if Russell was to pick up another 1 or 2. And I think that Hernan-Gomez's value is also okay. So Johnson is probably the one I get away from the most there. I would have the most confidence out of the Minnesota value in Beasley and then Hernan-Gomez.
I like Beasley quite a bit. I mean,
Yep.
Yes, D'Angelo Russell made his debut. Beasley only 12 shot attempts, but he still played 32 minutes. And like I said, Toronto's not an easy team, even with some of these injuries. They're not a particularly easy team to rack up, the counting stats against. They really aren't. Now, the issue with Charlotte is they play at an absolute crawling pace. I mean, 94 possessions per game, or per 48, I should say, is really, really, really concerning. But at the same time, does it even matter here? Like you just pointed out a few important things. They are unbelievably bad, and it's not going to get better anytime soon. I don't know. I feel like there's still plenty of meat left on the bones for a guy like Malik Beasley, who, yes, I think you have to worry a little bit about what you're getting in D'Angelo Russell. But if he keeps playing 30 plus minutes, Beasley, then I'm going to be okay with it. And right now, from a value perspective, if James Johnson's going to be like the highest owned guy on this team, that's concerning. I will point out, this is one thing that concerns me. In that last game with Russell healthy, he led the team with 14 potential assists. Karl Anthony Towns had 11. That's worth noting. And Beasley only 4. So I do think Beasley is going to be another guy where we end up relying on scoring to kind of propel his fantasy totals, and shouldn't be expecting a lot of assists.
Yeah, and Beasley's just also a guy who he rarely ever drives, so it's just really hard to trust him there. I guess it's just trying to worth analyzing just the situation that you got was James Johnson didn't end up starting. It was Okogie there, but they ended up closing with James Johnson for the final 5 minutes of the game, and that in 5.5 minutes. So that's really the difference between the last two games for Johnson. You had him play about just under 21 minutes in the previous game. He ends up playing 27.7 in this one. So the difference was that he closed, which at 3,500 would make for a huge difference for him. So at that ownership, you're hoping that he closes yet again, but then you're also hoping a lot of other things go your way when he's going to be probably the fifth option on the court.
Yep. And you know what? For his career, he has been a quality, at least a good enough per minute guy. 0.9 fantasy points per minute, DraftKings points per minute from his career. I can handle that. But I agree. If that, I can't imagine that ownership stays that high. If it does, my God, run. I mean, seriously, if it stays, that's just crazy. What's he at, 44% or something?
Yeah, 44.7%. And that's the thing. Like, I should point that out as well. Like, he's a fine fantasy point per minute producer. And even if he only got those 20 minutes today at 3,500, he looks like an okay option. Charlotte is right now the second worst team in offensive rebounding. They're bottom 5 in field goal percentage in the paint. So it's a good spot for anybody that will have some power forward, small forward minutes, even that plays lower. The issue is just the ownership on it. Like, if he was 15, 20% owned, I'd have more interest.
So Cody Martin remains out for this game. PJ Washington's price continues to come down. I'll tell you this much. I think PJ Washington, and yes, he's going to get some ownership. I know he struggled recently, not shooting well. 36 minutes last game. By the way, you said how bad Charlotte is. How bad are the Pistons for scoring 76 points in Detroit? I mean, against them. But I still think PJ Washington's a more than viable option. His price is at 4,400. They're getting a significant pace-up matchup against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Also a Minnesota Timberwolves team that defensively is a far cry from elite. So, yeah, it's obviously the best spot from an offense versus defensive perspective for the Minnesota Timberwolves. But let's not ignore the fact that this is not a juggernaut of a team on the other side either. Over the past 30 days, the Minnesota team, and let's also remember that they were much better with Gorgie Jang at center. But now 115.4 defensive rating over the last 30 days. It's basically the same as the Spurs, who over that span ranked 28th. And then you've also got the Timberwolves averaging almost 104 possessions per 48. That puts them 5th in the league. So it's a big pace-up spot against a bad defense for Charlotte, too, no matter how poorly they've played.
Yeah, I agree. And it starts to make a couple of these guys look appealing. And right now, you touched on PJ Washington at the top. Washington currently grades out as my number one play today at 4,400. It's obviously factoring in the price, but he looks good. I have him in for not even the minutes that he got last game with no Martin. That can easily be just duplicated. I have him in right now for 33 minutes, and he grades out for 25.8 fantasy points. He looks really good right now. The ownership's following it at 33%, but unlike James Johnson, I would feel okay getting to Washington a little bit more. The minute stability is there. You know what you're going to get from him production-wise in this offense since he's been in it all year long, as opposed to Johnson. So Washington stands out. And then it's just what we usually debate here in terms of Devontae Graham and Terry Rozier, and the fact that they're both going to play 35 minutes. Will they have a decent shooting night? More so Graham from three, as he struggled the second half of this first half of the season. So it's interesting. I would have more interest in Rozier at the cheaper price point. 6,100 is a really favorable price point. Have him for just under 32 fantasy points right now. So that stands out. Worth pointing out that Minnesota is, and it's hard to judge after this trade and how some of those players impact it, but they are the number 6 team in the league in defense in transition. So that will hurt some of these guards, especially Graham, very good in the transition 3 game. So it just makes me like Rozier even more. So I have this as Washington, Rozier, Graham in that order, and that's about it from this team.
Yeah, I'm not paying for Bridges. Just no interest in doing that.
Yeah.
Devontae Graham, what do you? I mean, this is rhetorical because you just outlined where you're at on him. But the minutes have been there consistently. Even when he was playing through that awful stretch of basketball, the minutes were still there. Now, are we confident that he has turned things around? It's tough to say. As long as the shot volume is there, I'm not opposed to getting to him. But even last game, he had 11 rebounds, 11 assists, 7 rebounds, and 3 stocks. He shot 1 for 9 from 3. So I don't want to pretend like these shooting woes are behind us, especially given that when he was playing really well, this was also a very small sample for a guy that came out of nowhere early in the season. So I still don't have an issue with him, but when it comes to Graham, I think I'd rather shop around for a better price. $6,800 on FanDuel is very palatable. Rozier's $5,800 on FanDuel, but then again, Sal, and Rozier 61 on DraftKings, I think is more than reasonable against Minnesota. The big thing though is on FanDuel, everyone's underpriced.
Yeah, exactly. So it just, any type of value that you're getting there becomes a little bit less overall appealing because you realize that you're getting deals everywhere. Graham, the thing early on was the guy was shooting over 40%, close to 45% from 3 earlier in the season. That has quickly dipped down to 38% from 3, which is, it's still a fine rate. It's a little bit above league average at 38%, 63rd percentile, but it's quickly and continuously dropping down as you would expect it to from a hot start. His overall effective field goal rate, not great, below 50%. He doesn't finish at the rim. He doesn't really get to the rim much. So you're relying on a player who has spikes in him, so more of a GPP play there, but you're also not getting that good of a bargain on DraftKings at, I think, still 7,400. Yeah,
I would agree with that. FanDuel's a little bit easier to get to, but I think we can move on from this one. Over the last month, Graham's shooting 32% from 3, 38% from the field. So
yeah, it's rough.
It's been brutal. Memphis and Portland. Memphis Grizzlies at home, 4-point favorites, 235.5 total. They have a 120 implied total, 116 for the or 119.8 and 115.8 for the Portland Trailblazers. We'll kick it off with Memphis here. Is there anybody that you're particularly high on, from the Jonas Valanciunas to the Ja Morant's coming off probably his best game of the season, a 27, 10, and 10 triple-double. Thanks, Washington. Portland playing their second of a back-to-back today. Defensively, they have really labored, and they shouldn't be as worried about this being a second of a back-to-back on the road because most of these guys played less than 30 minutes yesterday. But Memphis still has the advantage here.
Yeah, Memphis, I think I agree with that. And you're seeing the price points finally come up, especially on a guy like Ja Morant, who was in the low 6K range not that long ago on DK. So now with him at 7,500, it's just the spot where I'm fine passing on it. I don't think it's terribly egregious, the price point. It's just fair at this point. So I probably don't get there as much. But a lot of Memphis does stand out after that. The guy who stands out the most for me that I probably end up getting to, so 2 players, D'Anthony Melton, even if I just put him at 21 minutes and not 22 or 24 that he could definitely get today, at 4,100, he stands out. I don't even have him as the 1.05, 1.1 fantasy point per minute producer he's been this year. I have him at just 0.95 fantasy points for this matchup at 21. At 21 minutes, he looks like a fine option, a good value at 4,100. Jaren Jackson Jr. is the other one. So the minutes can always vary. He's gotten better with the foul trouble, definitely over the last month and a half to 2 months. Have him today just under 1.1 fantasy points per minute at 30 minutes. He stands out at 6,400 as somebody in GPP specifically that I would like getting to, especially if none of the ownership comes in on him, which right now he's around 11% projected ownership. So I think Melton and Jackson Jr. Or where I would get the most. You could throw in guys like Dylan Brooks and Joe Val, and I'd be fine with it. They're just not as much of priorities.
Okay. How about on the other side with the Blazers? Damian Lillard, 10-2 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, you've got him weighing in at 9,600. If you're looking at guys like Lillard at his position compared to, LeBron and Trae Young, DraftKings specifically here, and Luka Doncic, where does he grade out for you?
Yeah, so they're all really close. So right now I have it as Towns is well above them all as the guy that I would prefer paying up for right now. If I give Luka 32 minutes, he's not somebody I really get too much interest in. If I give him then 34 minutes, he would be right behind Towns as my second option. And then filtering in after that, it's Trae Young above Lillard, and then LeBron and Lillard are pretty much a toss-up. I have them separated by 0.7 fantasy points. So I'll rank it right now for how I have it set. Towns, Trae Young, LeBron, and Lillard.
Okay. Oh, man. What about the rest of Portland? I mentioned yesterday that Terry Stotts has been feeding these guys just an absurd amount of playing time lately. You know, you look at Trevor Ariza and you're getting, 40 minutes, 37 minutes. He got ejected from that one game early on against Utah, but he's been getting a huge amount of minutes. 27 minutes yesterday, though. This game ended up being a pretty considerable blowout. Zion Williamson scored 31 points. Hassan Whiteside played only 27 minutes. This was not the expectation at all. Only a 3-point spread. Should have been a competitive game, but hey, that's basketball. They end up losing by 21. But it was weird because I guess it wasn't weird. They were down 26. Stotts went full hockey line changes with Whiteside, McCollum, Ariza, Melo, and Lillard actually never came in for the fourth. So for the final 9.5 minutes, it was Moses Brown, Jalen Horde, Anthony Simons, Wayne Gabriel, and Caleb Swanigan that closed this game out. So I would expect them to get right back to playing considerable minutes today. Terry Stotts has been feeding them. It just needs to stay close. Is that enough to have interest in some of these guys?
Yeah, I think so. So just to kind of close the thoughts on Lillard, he ranks out up near with those other guys, not as like a priority play compared to them. But when I factor in randomness, and he's only 5% projected right now, I'll probably get right around or a little bit more than that. So he'll become a little bit more appealing than like a median projection would look like for me. But Whiteside's the guy that I like the most here. Had him last night. Very disappointing that he drops 40 plus in 3 quarters. And then you said the blowout ensued, and he was well on his way to 50 plus in fantasy points. So 8,400, you're getting a guy who I have him today as a 1.28 fantasy point per minute producer. He's been over 1.3 this season. Have him at, I believe, 30. I don't know if I gave him 33 or 34. I ended up giving him 33 minutes, so there's definitely more there. Memphis is a bottom 10 offensive rebounding team. They're top 10 in terms of negatively, in terms of turnover rate, so that helps a guy like Whiteside, who's active in the box department as well as picking up steals for a center. So I like Whiteside the most there. The rest of the guys then filter in after that as McCollum, Lillard, I have interest in. With Melo's price now at 5,500 as opposed to where it was the high 4K range, not as much interest. You can talk me into guys like Gary Trent and Ariza. The only downside is that Anthony Simons is now back. He played 18 minutes last night. He seems to be healthy. And Mario Hezonja missed last night. If he's in there, that can also pull minutes away from Trent and Ariza. So their point per minute production, not that great. Their price points have come up, so not as much interest as I have had some previous games.
Okay. So Ariza played 24 minutes through 3 quarters. He probably would have played, if this game was close, he probably would have played 10 minutes in the fourth. So I'd give him around 34 today. I might curtail his run a little bit from where I had it yesterday, but I don't have an issue with him. He's just not a good per minute guy. Yeah, it's a pace up Memphis team, and I think there's some interest here, but less than there was yesterday when there were only 5 games. We'll have a lot more to choose from today. Anybody else you want to get to here?
No, that's all.
Okay. Dallas and Sacramento. Luka Doncic will be back in the mix today. The Dallas Mavericks are 8.5-point favorites, 226.5 total. And this one in Dallas, where they're amazingly only 14-14. They're the opposite of the Sixers. They've been very good on the road, and at home they've been very disappointing. But that's neither here nor there. What are your thoughts on Dallas now that, Porzingis is still above 8K because Luka was out? Many of these guys who were priced up with Doncic sidelined are going to lose pretty much all value. Brunson at 5,500. Hardaway is 6K. Over on FanDuel, Porzingis is 8,400. Brunson is 40? I guess he's priced down. Shouldn't be surprised. Hardaway 51. I still don't like them, but the point is on DraftKings, everyone is priced up because this is Luka's first game back.
Yeah, exactly. So it just makes everything else outside of Luka not that appealing for me. So you touched on it with Porzingis. He's going to go from like a 1.35 fantasy point per minute producer to at best like a 1.2 guy here. Everybody else being priced up from Seth Curry in the 5K range. You have Tim Hardaway at 6K flat. None of that looks appealing. It'll be interesting to see what they do now that Luka's back with their front court. So they acquired Willie Cauley-Stein during the injury of Luka. Will they play him at center as a starter and now move Porzingis to the 4 since they don't have to play with as many guards, which they usually do. So I'll be interested to see the starting lineup there. That would make a guy like Willie Cauley-Stein at 4K if he was to draw the start. I'm not projecting it right now, but if he was to draw the start at the 5, I think there's an increased chance today with Luka's potential and probable return that can happen. But outside of that, it would just be focusing on Luka for me. You get him at 10-9 where you have not seen him at that low of a price tag in a while. The concern is just a game before the All-Star break. Do they just run him out there for 26, 28 minutes? And then he's not useless. He could still go off in that time in a fine matchup, but he's not as appealing to pay up for. If I give him 32 minutes, he projects out for me as my second highest projected player behind Towns at 55 fantasy points. If I give him full run today, which it's hard to see that happening, he'll project out for just under 60 fantasy points and would then become much more of a priority for me. I
don't really get why you would even put him out there today. I mean,
yeah, it's an interesting timing.
I guess here's my thing, and here's why I disagree a little bit. I think I'm not worried about him getting full minutes. I think he will, and could be completely wrong here. I don't think that Carlisle would run him out there at home against the Kings if he wasn't at 100%. So we'll see. It could definitely be a spot where he only plays low 30s. It was an ankle injury, but I think if he comes out there and feels okay, why else would you play him prior to the All-Star break if he wasn't a full go? But with that said, where did you say you had him ranked overall?
So if I put him at 34 minutes, give him full run, overall he would be my 9th favorite play of the day. I'd have him but he would be my highest projected scoring player.
Okay. Now on FanDuel, 9,700 is silly.
Yeah, that's
so.
Nice.
I mean that's all you need to say there. That it's too cheap. I don't have anything else from Dallas, like I said. Do you?
No, that's all. And I think that it's probably not right, but I think there's actually some merit to the fact that Luka is playing in the All-Star game. Obviously they don't care too much about his performance in that game, but instead of having him go in cold his first time playing injured in an All-Star game, at least let him get a game under his feet. I think that makes some sense.
Yeah, I'd be like, listen, fella, you're going to be in plenty of these.
Yeah.
Chill. You don't need to do this.
I saw when they were drafting the teams, they mentioned that to LeBron because I think he picked Luka, and they said, well, you're going to be pushing for him to get back in time. And he said, oh, he's going to play. He better play. You got some pressure from LeBron too, probably.
We'll have some All-Star game content, videos and such. So keep an eye out for that. We'll be doing a live stream or two. Any interest in the Kings?
Yeah. So I'm always somebody who ends up getting a lot more interest in De'Aaron Fox, even on nights when nobody has that much interest in him. So I always project him for somewhere around 34, 35 minutes. That's now he's starting to get those minutes because they're staying competitive in these games. Who knows if that's the case tonight with Luka back for Dallas, but I'll have interest in De'Aaron Fox. And a lot of these guys actually look fine. Bielitsa still playing big minutes. No Rashawn Holmes, no Bagley still. You might get Jabari Parker playing today. He is questionable for this game to make his debut with Sacramento, but I don't think that pulls anything from Bielitsa as much as it would hurt guys like Kent Bazemore and maybe your Yogi Ferrell's in the rotation. So I like right now Fox the most from this team, Bielitsa after that. And then Bogdan is playing good run or getting good minutes, getting good run right now. He's priced up now to 5,100. It's going to be a tougher defensive matchup with Luka in there, but he also looks fine. Have him for 26 and change fantasy points.
Okay. Moving it along here. We've got 3 to go. It's a big slate, man. It's a big slate. Utah and Miami. I don't personally need to spend a lot of time here. 4.5 point favorites. Jazz laying 4.5, 217.5 total. There are a lot of good games on this slate. This one just to me does not jump off the page. Now, if you're looking at some salaries, then you might be able to make a few arguments that some guys are underpriced. I know Jay Crowder's played really well, but I'm okay not trying to catch that lightning in a bottle again. Jimmy Butler's price is affordable. He's coming off a strong game in his return from that short hiatus. But you know, all in all, it's really not that appealing to me. I guess we should mention that Mike Conley is questionable with an illness.
Yeah, questionable with an illness. I projected him in today just because of the matchup at 5,700 too. He's not that appealing. So starting on Utah's side, they're all, like you said, not a lot here. They're all pretty much okay type of filler plays for me at their price points. I think Mitchell stands out at 7,300 a little bit more. The defensive matchup is going to be tougher for both sides of this. One thing that does stand out though, Utah is the number 2 team in the league in just field goal percentage shooting, and Miami's number 4. So those are teams that are just efficient in general. So even in tougher matchups, they can still thrive, and you're not going to see that reflected in the ownership. So I do think these players are a little bit more sneaky. I have interest in really right now Mitchell, Gobert, Bojan. You can even talk me into Ingles. All of them are sort of fillers. My highest graded player that I have is Mitchell right now for 37.6 fantasy points. But for the most part, they're all just middling values for me.
Fair enough. They're also 6th and 9th in limiting opposing field goal percentage. Miami allowing the lowest 3-point percentage on the season. Utah 6th lowest. I think it's a spot where I'd want guys that are closer to the rim than I would. Like, to me, Bogdanovich is a little bit concerning there with how well Miami has limited those 3-pointers. But what's interesting about them is, like, you look at the 76ers, they're allowing 28 3-point attempts per game to opponents. The Miami Heat, explain this to me. This is weird. The Miami Heat allow the lowest 3-point percentage in the league and the 3rd most 3-point attempts.
Yeah, that's just like you said, a weird stat. That's something just closing out wise is not there right now. I'm not too sure.
It's really strange. I don't know. I mean, they're not allowing any field or 3-point. Maybe you know what it is. Maybe it's the zone. Just like not. I don't know. Who knows? Strange though. Definitely strange. Anybody else here? I think you covered most of it. Do you want to? Is there anybody from Miami that you want to get to more in depth?
No, not really. They're just not appealing. Like Bam, it's just a brutal spot for his skill set against Gobert. He's not somebody who could take his game outside of the paint all that much compared to just other centers that you would feel better about. Like he can surely play at the point, but that's not where they want to have him. Maybe they scheme it that way, but I'm just not going to rely on that. Butler in his return right now at $8,000. I think it's just a fair price point. Just grades out as a guy that is very neutral on an 11-game slate. And everything after that doesn't look that great. Dragic's price is still up with Butler returning in the last game. Not great. Nunn's going to see less minutes. You still have no hero, but if anything, that just keeps Dragic around 26 minutes and 28 maybe, and doesn't make me feel great. So you'll get the biggest minutes out of probably Bam, Butler, and Duncan Robinson here. Don't want to rely on Robinson, and Bam and Butler are just appropriately priced in a really tough spot. So Crowder's the guy who actually grades out the best here for me. And even that's not great. It's like outside of top 60 of a player pool. And
this is reflected in ownership. I mean, right now there's a little bit on guys like Jingles, and Mitchell, but very, very little amount. You have to come down to the 4% range to find Bam Adebayo, where he would be the highest owned player for Miami. So I'm like you said, it could be a sneaky spot. I do think this game will be competitive, but I'm also not chomping at the bit to get there either. Phoenix and Golden State, we've got 2 to go. Make it a decent pace here. Usually Josh and I take 2 hours to get through 6 games, so I think we're doing pretty good. The Phoenix Suns 7.5-point favorites, 226.5 total. They have a 117 implied total today, which is one of the higher marks on this slate. Meanwhile, on the other side, you can't say the same for the Golden State Warriors. This team, I can't even use the word in disarray because, this is, there was an architect behind this move. This is all planned out. And, when Damian Lee is supposed to be your top scorer, you're not expecting to do very much. So we'll start with Phoenix. I mentioned to you earlier, I really like Devin Booker here. It's hard not to. Over the last month, you've seen him up his usage. He's playing Monty Williams is giving him an incredible amount of minutes. Assists have been a little bit more abundant, and there's just nothing really not to like at $8,400 on DraftKings, at $8,100 on FanDuel. Going in as huge favorites with one of the higher totals on this slate. Devin Booker is definitely a viable option to me today. What are you doing with Booker and the rest of the Suns? And we'll get to Ayton, so let's do that last.
Yeah, definitely. So Booker's my favorite play right now from the Suns. The minutes have been sort of up and down, but what the upside in a close game on Booker's minutes are going to be. They're going to be pushing 40 minutes. So
yeah, those have all been blowouts, by the way, whereas every one of them where he played like 32 or fewer minutes was a blowout.
Yeah, exactly. So I have him at 36 minutes today, and the upside for that, or 35 minutes today, and the upside for that is you can get 3 more, and he looks even better at this price tag. So at 8,400, he's one of my priority type plays on the slate. You get a Golden State team that struggles on defense, gets worse just after some of the players that were traded away. The concern is if just the game stays close, but hard to really project that. Vegas isn't expecting any sort of major blowout here. So, I like Booker the most at the minutes that I give him. Point per minute production is there. The 30% assist rate is now peaking. The 30% usage rate has been there now for about 2 months straight. So Booker's the guy for me. After that, you still get the big minutes out of Kelly Oubre. At 6,200, it's something of a spot where he's like the third mouth to feed if Ayton's in there at best. And I just don't really like paying the 7K range for those types of guys. It is a fine spot for him. He's in a player pool for me right now. He plays big minutes, so I think he's at least worth looking at, but I don't want to prioritize it. And Rubio just makes a player pool as well. I think that I probably end up getting to the most Booker and then some shares of Oubre and Rubio. And this is with me projecting it if Ayton was to go in and play around like 32 to 30. Right now I have him at 34 minutes. So normal run. The more that I think about it, the more I think it's not likely he plays today, but I'll just wait for, or at least hope that we get official news and then change it later, if anything.
With the All-Star break upon us, it's hard to say because I wouldn't have thought that Luka was going to play either, right? But yeah. I think I'm with you in saying that I don't expect Ayton to play. If he doesn't play, that's when things start to get a little bit more interesting because Check Diallo's price has come up quite a bit, but he played 39 minutes last game, Sal. Did you mention that already? If you did,
no.
Okay.
No, I'm just laughing because it's ridiculous.
39 minutes last game. He shot only 9 times, 7 to 9. Usage was like 1%, but that's an absurd amount of minutes. Go ahead and look at that, by the way. If you're listening, go to popcornmachine.net and look at the rotations here. You saw Check Diallo play all but 2 minutes in the first half, right? All but 2 minutes in the first half. Here's the best part. You'd be like, okay, he got blowout run, right? No, he didn't. He was actually pulled for the final 5 minutes. So if this game is close, are you telling me that Check Diallo plays 44 minutes? Because that's what he was on pace for.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing it out of necessity. They don't have Kaminsky. They don't have Baines.
Even Saric is out.
Yeah, Saric is out once again here. And, I mean, at this point, if you don't have Ayton in there, your center options are literally Diallo throwing Cam Johnson at the 5, which there's just no way that they can end up doing that. And then I believe
Tariq Owens.
Tariq Owens is up, and I think he's the guy who got, like, the 4 backup minutes or whatever it might have been.
It's crazy, yeah.
Yeah, so, like, in this matchup against Golden State, I guess if Looney's in, it's even better for a guy like Diallo, just in terms of size for more minutes to stay out there. But yeah, if there's no Ayton, they just have to do this. And the fact that the All-Star break's coming up, I don't think they care if they run him out there for extended run again. I don't have him projected for anything high right now because I'm just projecting backup center minutes behind Ayton. But if Ayton's out, it's going to be hard to not project him for 35 minutes of play today. And the thing that's crazy is, yeah, he didn't take a lot of shots, but he's has a much higher, especially in that many minutes, rebounding rate upside, picking up peripherals.
Yep.
He had almost, even though he shot so well, almost as bad of a game as you can have in that much run. And still at the price point paid it off. So even with the price point now up to 5K, if I give him like 34 minutes of play, he's like a 0.9 fantasy point per minute producer this year. In his career, he's around there. So he'll look really good.
Man, I never thought I'd be willing to just, go and say, yeah, I'll pay 5K for Check Diallo, but I really don't have an issue with it because, well, obviously Ayton has to be out, obviously. Yeah. But, I mean, think about this. You mentioned it. It's out of necessity. And the one thing that is very telling to me is Monty Williams did not want to run Tariq Owens. Like, basically, this was Diallo was on pace to play 44 minutes. He really was. And that's insane. He led the team with 12 rebound chances. I want to see more than that at 39 minutes, but that's kind of besides the point. If Ayton sits, those minutes have to go right back to Diallo, particularly before the All-Star break. There's really no concern with running a dude for huge minutes, and then you get a break. He's not in the All-Star game, I'll tell you that much. So, I don't mind doing this against the Golden State Warriors. If Ayton's out 5K on Diallo is actually a palatable price point because I expect him to get the minutes. He's $3,700 on FanDuel with power forward eligibility. Throw your hands up there. I mean, there's no real explanation outside of just go ahead and do it. He's probably going to play 40 minutes. Anything else from Phoenix before we get on to Golden State?
No, the only difference is that I just pulled up just Owens like player profile. He was drafted as a forward, so that makes some sense just size wise. And then I saw that he shares a birthday with me, so now maybe I got to project him for a couple more minutes.
What's his birthday?
June 30th, 1995. He's a year older than me.
All right, cool.
Wild. Anyone
else?
No, that's it. There's nothing else here. Actually, I guess if Ayton is out, I would also have a little bit more interest in even if Ayton's in Cam Johnson. Just the rebounding upside for a guy like Johnson would be better if Ayton's out.
Okay. Let's move it over then to the other side of this one with the Warriors. They are depleted. So, and by the way, I said Damian Lee, their top scorer. That was only because last game, Andrew Wiggins had like 0 points at halftime. It was brutal or something like that. I'll voice my my concerns, I should say, with this one more time. I worry that Andrew Wiggins on a team that has no other viable scorers is going to really struggle. We saw it when Towns was out for like 15 games earlier this year. His EFG dropped by 10%. This is something that we should be concerned about for sure. And, take it for what you will. The last 2 games, he shot okay. I just don't know if it's sustainable. I don't have much faith in Andrew Wiggins at this price point. I know it's against Phoenix. I'll get your take here, but I am still pretty underwhelmed by Andrew Wiggins on a team that really has no backup plans outside of him.
Yeah, so like the thing, it's just kind of brutal for this year right now for them. Like maybe you get Steph back in a month or two. At this point, it doesn't seem like it.
I'm talking about their current roster.
Yeah, like currently right now, this is just brutal. It's Damian Lee, it's Jordan Poole, and maybe, I mean, you see them taking so many chances now on more guards. They brought up the previous game for like 10 minutes. You had Jeremy Pargo, if it's pronounced right, Zach Norwell Jr. ended up playing. And I'm actually excited to see what he does moving forward if he gets more run, Norwell Jr. But for right now, it's hard to project him anything more than like 14 minutes. So they've got a lot of guards right now, and it's making it hard to choose from these guys because they're just all splitting like low to mid teens in minutes. So what stands out from this team is not much. At 7,600, I don't have much interest in Wiggins, even though it is a fine matchup. He's just not grading out well. It's really hard to rely on him when, one, even if he's going to have more assist chances, who's going to be productive and closing in on those assists for him and making buckets. So that's hard to judge. The things that stand out the most are probably Damian Lee again at 5,200, but you're playing a guy here whose minutes are probably around 28 to 30, and you're hoping for a spike shooting night to get the best out of him. And then Jordan Poole's been playing a little bit more as of late, played 30 plus in the last game. I only have him at 26 for this one, but at 3,900, he's been shooting a lot more as of late. He shot 14, 12, and 11 in his last 3 games. And he's picking up some peripherals as well in terms of assists and rebounding. It's just a $3,900 player that grades out for like 19 fantasy points. So this team in general is probably something I stay away from.
Want to close it out with Denver and the Lakers?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Hey, by the way, if you're looking for any free content on the site at awesemo.com, the deep dive today is going to be free. Yes, the deep dive from Adam Scher himself. He does a great job on this. We used to switch off each and every day, but we got Adam Pfeiffer doing the other days now. But yeah, Adam Scher does it today. It's a great article. Check that out. Whenever that's free, you got to read that. NHL lineup builder, PGA rankings, player rankings as well. All of that at awesemo.com is free. Let's finish this one up, Sal. And hey, appreciate you guys always hanging with us through the end of this. It is a long show with 11 games, and we appreciate you. Roy, thank you for the super chat, man. I just saw that now. And if you guys enjoy the show and you do want to help support us, the easiest way to do it is by hitting that thumbs up button. It really does help us out a lot with the YouTube algorithm Sal, I don't know a ton about this, but I do know that there have been changes to it, and it makes it harder for smaller creators to reach a broader audience like they used to. So, that thumbs up button definitely does a lot. We appreciate you. Subscribe, hit the notification bell as well. Lakers, Detroit Nuggets. Here we go. Let's finish this one out. We got the Nuggets at did I say Detroit Nuggets?
Yeah.
I did, didn't I? Yeah. Denver Nuggets. Sorry, that's colossal disrespect. 220.5 over under. Lakers are 2.5 point favorites at the Pepsi Center. Is this one that stands out to you?
No, not really. I mean, there's some pieces that look a little bit appealing on 1 or 2 on each side, but nothing in this game is right now a priority for me.
Okay. Me neither. And, I'd say this is a much better game to watch than it is to play from a DFS perspective.
Yeah, I agree. And so my most interesting player, and I'll just start on Denver side, he's my favorite player in the entire game, and it's Jamal Murray. But even then, he doesn't grade out anything fantastic. I'll pull it up for what he's going to grade out on the entire slate for me. He grades out as my 45th play overall. So a lot of these plays are in that range, nothing of priority. Murray I have for like 35 and change fantasy points. He actually ends up being the highest projected owned player from this game, but he's at 6%. So nobody's owning this game right now. I think the pricing in this game is probably the best out of any game on the slate, which makes it a little bit more difficult. You still have Paul Millsap on somewhat of a minutes limit, around 20, it seems. Maybe that gets lifted or a little bit increased. But for right now, Jeremy Grant's still able to get upper minutes in around 28 to 30. He's not that productive of a player, though, and a lot of those are now alongside all of them Jokic. He also is going to be in a really tough matchup against the Lakers. So Grant is somebody that I would look at as value at 4,300, but nowhere near somebody that's a priority. But that's it from this team. Like Jokic, I'm not going to really get much of at this point. To start today, I thought I would have a little more at the 10-1 tag, but overall, it's just the matchup that's dragging it down and the opportunity cost of the other 6 or 7 players in that 10K range. And then on the Lakers side, it's really just the top 2 options. It's LeBron and Anthony Davis. They grade out very similar. I have AD at 34 minutes, LeBron at 35. At that point, LeBron is somebody I have projected for a little over 53 fantasy points, Davis 50 flat, and they're just both secondary options to Towns and Trae Young, and then they start to become some ownership plays for me compared to like Lillard's at that point. So nothing else from this team, though. I know Rondo and has been playing more minutes and playing a little bit better. Danny Green as well, but still not interesting against Denver.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised Denver wins this game at home. I think it's a very winnable spot, but all in all, I'm with you. Like Jokic, I'm never going to hesitate to get to Jokic with the way he's played recently. And as far as prioritizing him goes, I wouldn't say that's going to be the case. Looking at where the field stands on Jokic, 4%, that is appealing to me. There's no doubt about that. But Karl Anthony Towns, similarly priced. I know he's a lot higher owned though right now. Does that do anything for you? We can close it out with this. And before I forget, we did get news that Larry Nance will start if Kevin Love is out. Usually when you get news that says this guy will start if this guy is out, that guy, the latter, is probably going to be out. Yeah. So, go ahead and close it out with just the the idea of ownership with guys like Jokic and Towns and these other high-priced guys.
Yeah, so you have the ownership right now in Towns at 28%. I think that's completely fine. Honestly, I'm not worried about getting away from it. But yeah, the bigger question, like you're hinting at, is just like the comparison for Jokic at 4% compared to Towns.
Yeah.
If I just look at them compared to each other right now, I have Towns for 56.4 fantasy points. I have Jokic currently for just under 49 fantasy points. So there's a large enough gap of like 7% to where I probably end up coming in where this is. Now, if throughout the day you get like Towns getting up to 40% and Jokic isn't moving, that's a wide enough gap to where I'm fine getting off of it, especially in a big real life game in the Western Conference for Jokic to get up for. But right now where it's at with the difference that I have, if I'm just thinking about how these lineups crunch out and optimize later, I'm assuming that I would probably have a similar gap between Jokic and Towns.
All right. That's it, Sal. 11 up, 11 down.
It's a long slate.
It's a big slate. It is a big slate, but we're going to have a lot more coming up throughout the day, so stick with us on this pre-All-Star break week or slate. I always appreciate the NBA. The one thing they do pretty consistently is Valentine's Day always falls over the All-Star break, so I'm not going to get in trouble for betting. I'm not going to get in trouble for playing DFS while we're out to dinner. It's a great thing,
No, yeah, it's really nice. Like I say, like I just love the NBA season. It's my favorite sport, but it's like 6 to 7. You're like a prison to your work from just injury news for the NBA. Yep. So it's like the best, just nice little week vacation type of spot. I'm going to try and get out and go see DC or something.
Nice. Yeah. It's like, sorry, babe, can't go out to dinner until 7:30. On Valentine's Day, it doesn't look great. So
yeah. Yeah, it's brutal.
Anyway, we've got the NHL strategy show coming up with Jake Hari and Nolan Kelly. That'll be from 4 to 5. Premium live stream with Osimo himself. That's around 4 o'clock as well. So you got the pick of the litter there with whatever sport you're looking to play. The deeper dive tonight with Adam Sher and myself, and then Spags and Josh Ingham, and close it out with Live Before Lock. And that'll do it for us. We'll see you back here after the. Actually, no. You know what? We got 2 games tomorrow. So yeah, we'll still have all of this stuff. We'll still have the early bird strategy show. Only 2 games, but we do what we do. We make sure to get content out to you. Thanks for watching. As always, remember, check out SuperDraft, biggest contest ever that they've ever run today. 40K, 10K to first. Use the promo code AWESEMO. Don't forget, AWESEMO, to get $20 in free super cash when signing up. Use the promo code NBA Strategy to get 50% off your first week at awesemo.com. And go check out Adam Sher's deep dive today. It's totally free over on the site. We'll see you back here tomorrow on the Strategy Show presented by SuperDraft.